let's talk a little bit about the latest on the Microsoft Graph Toolkit. I'm joined today by Gavin, our principal software engineer, dev lead on the Microsoft Graph Toolkit side, and he's going to do some pretty awesome demos. So can't wait for that. Let's move on. So if you don't know what the Microsoft Graph Toolkit is a collection of reusable framework agnostic components and auth providers that allows you to access and work with the Microsoft Graph. Think about drop-in components for any web apps that are client-side. So you want to have a people picker? We have a people picker. Don't have to build all that functionality for yourself. We have it. We handle graph, we handle authentication, we handle throttling, we handle everything, so you don't have to think about it and just build value for your organization. The components are fully functional, so they're not dummy components. They are fully working, connected to Graph, have all the capabilities in there, but they are fully customizable also. So they allow you to change how they behave, how they look, and they work with any web framework. So if you're working with React, if you're working with Angular, if you're working with Vue, with Svelte, with any new framework out there, anything, they work with them. And they also work on all modern browsers, and they also work as desktop apps when using Electron. You would be using the Graph Toolkit to cut on dev time, because that way you don't have to rebuild again and again and again all of these components. How many times have you built a person component connected to Graph and bring the picture and bring the presence of that user? How many Graph calls does that represent? Well, in the case of the Graph Toolkit, it represents for you 0 calls because we handle all of them. They're beautiful, but they're flexible. Our components are built to look like M365, and you're going to see in this session that they look even more like M365 in our future version, but they're fully customizable. So if you want to change, you want to make them look like your own brand, you can do it, and they work everywhere. So that's where you want to use the Graph Toolkit. So let's move on directly to our what's new for V3. Let's dive in and let's talk about what we're going to get with the version 3 of the Graph Toolkit. First of all, we're going to get a fully refreshed set of components. So all of our components are currently being built with Fluent UI in mind. For a very long time, we have been pretending to be M365 components because there were no alternatives to the technology that we're using. We're using web components. There were no libraries built for Fluent UI in that case. And now we have the opportunity to use our Fluent UI web components library that the Fluent team is building. And now we have rebuilt a vast majority of the controls in our components using Fluent UI. So that means that you're going to get really, really cool dark mode capabilities. You're going to get automatic detection with some of the functionality we're going to build with Teams, for example, to automatically swap to a dark mode when you're using the dark mode of Teams and light mode and all of that. We're also bringing in 2 new components. One, which is a refreshed version of our login component, which now allows for multiple account support. That means that you will be able to swap from one account to the other the same way you can do it today in the M365 portals. Big, big, big productivity gain right here. The second thing that we're bringing is a generic picker control. That generic picker control will allow you to pick any entity from any Graph endpoint. So if you want to have an email selector, you're going to be able to build it. If you want to have a task list selector, you're going to be able to use it. If you want to have a site selector, you're going to be able to use it also. So anything you want to connect to from a selection standpoint that will also look very fluent to you, we're going to be able to do that straight from our new generic picker control. For all of you fans of SPFX and building solutions as web parts in SharePoint, you will be able now to build capabilities that will not impact other providers of web part components that are also using MGT. We had some issues in the past with the way that we build components, the way that SharePoint Framework registered these components. Now we have built-in disambiguation, meaning that every single providers will get their own instance of the Graph Toolkit and their own instance of the components that they have. That way, they will not have any collision with other components. It's a very, very, very niche feature that will save a lot of time for a lot of you that are building SPFX solutions. We're now going to support the Graph JavaScript SDK V3 with a vision on our side to support also our V4 in the future, not for now, but for later. We're going to also bring support for our sovereign cloud. So you will be able to use the Graph Toolkit natively in any of the community tenants, community cloud, if you're doing also on the DoD one and in the cloud in China. So any sovereign clouds will now be fully supported thanks to the toolkit. And finally, we bumped up our support for Node. Right now we support 14 and 16s, and we expect to support 18 as soon as the SharePoint framework also supports it. So we're going to match our support matrix for Node with the SharePoint framework. So that's what is coming up in V3. So let me do something quickly. Let me see if I can actually do that. Let me go to mgt.dev/next/v3, which is something you can already try out. That's our latest future branch that we have right here. Let me add it to the chat right here. So a couple of cool things now. For example, we have our MGT login now that has multiple account support. So you can go here and see that now Megan and Emily Brown are logged in, and you can swap from one to the other. It's going to reload the entire UI based on that identity. We'll use their token, their cache also. Something that we wanted to make sure that we support is per user cache. So make sure that, well, weird data issues happen in the future. So really, really cool component that we have right there. We also have an MGT picker, and our picker here allows, for example, in this case, to select a list of tasks. In this case, not exactly exciting because we only have one task list, right? In this sandbox tenant, you can task and you can react to selection, react to get the entire object that was selected to play with some of that stuff there. But let me show you something maybe a little bit more. Let's see users. Yeah, let's go with users. And now you can do display. So now I can actually select any user. So I'm going to select Ben Walters, and I could actually here say, hey, I want to sort it that way. I want to filter. I want to do all of these kind of things right there. So that's a really powerful capability that allows you to basically build the app you need. So we're empowering developers in that situation. A couple of other things that I think are really, really, really interesting is our person card. Our person card brings a revamped capability, very interesting, looks super, super, super slick, all built with Fluent UI right in here and here with all of our different components, with our org chart component and our files and some about us. But something that we're bringing also as a new capability to the person card is when I go to another card here where I can set the user, I'm logged in as Megan Bowen, but now, oh no, it's not there yet. It's going to come in our next PR. We need to merge it, but we now have the ability to send a message directly from here using Graph. So you have the same ability that we have in Teams to actually send a quick message right from here. So that's actually really, really, really cool that we have that capability now. And you're going to see a lot of the capabilities have been updated. If we look at our Teams channel picker, looks totally different. This one was not merged yet. So you're going to see that this branch is really, really, really moving a lot because we're working really, really hard on the future of this. So let me give you a glimpse to the file list because I think we're going to touch on that a little bit later on around the future. But you see here we have our nice file list, all Fluent UI built. The file list has been one of our most popular capability, and we want to make it even better in the future, and we're going to require feedback by the end of the session. So let me pause for a second. Let me say we're very excited to bring all these capabilities to V3, you can install it right away. You can already play with it, give us the feedback on this capability. We're excited about what's next with the Microsoft Graph Toolkit. But wait, there is more. V3 is really our upgrade to Fluent and some of our revamp capabilities. But what's next? What happens after V3? Well, let's have a look. What's next? We are working right now with the ACS team, the Azure Communication Services team, to bring a native Microsoft Graph Toolkit component that will be scoped to one-to-one or to one-to-many conversations. So you will be able to use a fully working chat component connected to any conversations that you're having in Teams via Graph, powered by the ACS UI Library. This is very, very, very exciting because it really unlocks amazing scenarios that we have been, like, customers have been asking for this for years. Now we believe is the time that the API is shaped in a way that it will empower us to do these things. And what if we could show you that today, or at least where we're at with that thing? So Gavin, please take over the screen.
Absolutely. So what we're going to show today is very, very early. I will say that. I would classify this as pre-alpha software. However, what we have done is we've worked with our friends over in the ACS team, and we've used their chat composite and provided some back-end plumbing to this so that we can actually have an ACS front end powered by chat from Microsoft Graph, aka Teams. So what we can see is on the left, I've got a custom web application. And on the right, I've got Megan, who's logged into Teams. I've got my admin account, demoing from the admin account. Naughty me. All right. And we can send messages but from Teams, and they are showing up in a dedicated web application. What this means is that you as developers will be able to integrate Teams-powered chat scenarios directly into your applications. And it'll work seamlessly. Yes, there's some formatting issues. Our friends in ACS had actually just pushed a build that resolves some of the formatting issues. I didn't want to tempt the demo gods today and pull that update. So that's a little sneak peek at what's coming in terms of chat. I hope you're all excited about the scenarios here. If you could share some of the scenarios that you're thinking about using this in the chat, that'd be great. But we've still got more things to show you that's on our roadmap for the future.
Absolutely. So we'd love, as Gavin is saying, we'd love to learn about scenarios where you would be using a component like this in your app. We have tons of scenarios on the back of our mind, but we'd love to get some of them. So either drop them in the chat, come to our repo, aka.ms/mgt, where you can create a conversation and issue whatever, shout out loud what you'd love to see, what can be done there would be great. Something I just saw Ryan chat. Right now we're focusing on private discussions, so one-on-one discussions or group discussions. Our next big jump will be channel conversations for this, but we need to envision it in a way that is a little bit different, but we'd love to get scenarios where channel conversation would be useful and how we can make it happen. And how will you make it happen in MGT? Super simple. An MGT conversation, a conversation ID, and voila. The rest is all handled by MGT. All the capabilities between Graph and MGT and ACS are all happening there. So really, really, really simple. So really excited about where we're going with all of this. Yeah, Jim, the support scenario is definitely one that comes up a lot. If we go beyond what's next with ACS, which will be our next main big release after our V3, we're thinking about a couple of improvements, or like kind of very welcomed improvements to some of our components. One of them being around our file list experience. And I'd love, Gavin, if you could go in and show a little bit what we have in mind and what we're hacking around to make our file list component better.
Yeah, just give me a moment to find the correct browser window.
That's okay.
Yeah, lots of browser windows at once. It's always the way. Here we go. That one. Share. So, in our storybook, one of the cool things is that with the way that we work out in the open, pretty much every one of our PRs, we can deploy to Storybook to view them as we work on them. So we're looking at making what we're calling a file composite, taking the existing file list and composing it up with some other components that we're going to work on. The first of these is a breadcrumb, which will allow us to actually drill into folders within a file list. Just by simply clicking on the folder, I can navigate down or back up. Relatively simple, but the UX here is really important to ensure that we've got things working nicely. That breadcrumb component that's sitting at the top here, we're going to ship that as a separate component so that you can use it in your own applications with whatever scenarios you dream up. It's extremely versatile. The other thing we're building is this little toggle between dark and light mode. Our file list component hasn't had the dark mode treatment yet, but we're working on, our theming options as well. So that's where we're going here. We're going to look at adding things like context menus to file list items and potentially a command bar here as well, so that when you have a selected file, you could, download it directly or share it with someone. Those kind of actions. Those are the things we're looking at with file list. I think Seb's got a pretty cool demo to show now, and one that is quite a generic scenario, but very compelling.
Absolutely. Let me share my screen. So one of the comments we've got a lot in the last couple of months is there is a huge, people are excited about Microsoft Search and the search endpoints. They want to use it, but now they need to go fully custom, right? We don't support that capability natively in MGT today, especially with MGT Get, which is kind of our Swiss Army knife to get access to anything, but the name of the component says it. It's MGT Get. We're not a Get. When we're doing search, we need to go via a post. So let me show you where we're at with our search component that will provide the same level of capabilities that MGT Get, but specifically for search scenarios. So let me go here. Let me kill this one up. Here I have a nice search center. So let me reload, make sure everything is logged in. I have a nice bar here, which is my search bar. Some of the ideas we have, we want to make the search bar as compelling as the one in M365, meaning that we would support 0 keyword queries, showing the latest, the recent capabilities, or files or groups or people you have been working with in a really, really simple approach. But also we want to provide you with not only a search bar, because that would be good, but not great, but also provide you with an interesting search results capability or component in MGT. So now, let's say that I want to search for Contoso. I can actually now see that all of these results are coming from any entities that exist in M365. So we're not talking about just SharePoint files. Here we're scoped to drive items in this scenario, but you can search for messages, conversations. You can search for list items, for connectors, external data, straight within this capability. And now you have all the goodness of MGT, because now it's all built with MGT, but also the integration. So now, for example, here, I can bring my people card as part of it. So we're really building a rich capability. And what is even better is not only we're building this to allow developers to build their own, but we're also providing default templates. And that's what you see here. This will be our default templates for a list of drive items, for example, where you're going to have the thumbnail coming up directly, where you're going to have all the capabilities around the summary and all of that, all thanks to M365 and the search capabilities directly on Microsoft Graph. So we're all built with this in mind. So let me end that conversation on this. I hope this was useful. Good question. So I see a question around Power Apps and everything. Power Apps is officially not part of M365. So it's not there in Graph today, but it would be if it was available as part of Microsoft Search, or anything that comes up in Search will absolutely be available in there. So excited about the future. We need to get your feedback, jump into our repo, say everything you need. Would love to hear from your scenarios.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you, Seb. Thank you, Gavin. Really awesome stuff. And of course, we'll have more demos on all of that future stuff in this call later on in the spring, hopefully. Right, Seb?
Yes, absolutely. We're our V3. So yes, thank you for putting me on the spot right here. So our V3,
exactly.
Our V3, the first real full preview of V3 will be at the end of this month in February, and we're aiming for early spring for our GA of V3. Then afterwards, the chat conversation, the conversation component afterwards, and then search and more files in the future.
Excellent. Thank you, Seb, for that one. And we'll, of course, keep on showing the greatness in the calls and in the demos and all of that.